Welcome to Praveen Patil College of Diploma Engineering and Technology. Myself Raj Gheware, working as a lecturer in mechanical department. We will look at subject theory of machine. So in this part of the video we will be looking at beam engine, that is crank and lever mechanism. So in this beam engine we will be looking at various linkage. So in a beam engine is a inverse of 4-bar chain mechanism. The function of this mechanism is to convert the rotary motion of the crank into reciprocatory motion. So when the crank rotates about the fixed center A, the lever C DE oscillates about center D, and the end of the lever E is connected to a piston rod which reciprocates in the cylinder. So this is the AB part, which will tends to perform a rotary motion, and this AB part is being connected further, so that is from B point to a C point. It is connected to a lever mechanism. So this EDC is performing a lever mechanism which will fluctuate up and downward, and further from this E point it is connected to a piston. So what will happen is when this crank rotates in this direction, so it will leads to perform a oscillating movement of this lever. So when this lever will tends to shift upward, so through the connection of E to the piston, it will leads to movement of reciprocatory motion, that is the piston will move in upward and downward direction. So the piston will move in upward as well as in downward direction. So this movement is clearly visible from this second diagram. So here this part is performing a rotary motion, and through this lever mechanism, see how the lever is performed. The lever is tends to move upward and downward direction, and from the other end of the lever it is connected to a piston. So how the piston is performing a reciprocatory movement, that is the piston is moving upward and in downward direction inside the cylinder. So this is all about the beam engine, mechanism of a beam engine, that is a crank and lever mechanism. Now we will discuss on the inversion of a single sliding crank chain. Now in this we will look at the first one, that is reciprocating engine mechanism of a first inversion, that is of first kind. So over here what happened is a reciprocatory steam engine mechanism is obtained by fixing link 1 acting as a cylinder, It consists of 4 link, namely crank, connecting rod, piston and cylinder, or a fixed frame. So in this 3 turning pair, that is OCP, and 1 sliding pair formed by piston P. Okay, now what we will be doing is, let's see the naming of this. This is the O point which has been fixed, this is the C point, and this is the P point, that is for the piston. So over here the 3 turning pairs, that is OCP, and there is 1 sliding pair found, that is the P, which is nothing but the piston, and a fixed cylinder which is shown from the figure. So as the crank rotates about a fixed center or the piston reciprocates in a cylinder, so function is to reciprocate motion into a rotating motion of a crank. So we are able to see that motion from the second part of this diagram. So this is the second part of the diagram. So from here we are clearly able to understand which is performing a reciprocatory and which is performing a rotary movement. And as the piston moves in forward direction, that is in this direction, so the crank will stands to move in this forward direction, that is in forward rotation manner. So as at a certain interval of time, when this piston again goes backward, when this piston again go to the backward direction, so the crank will rotates further to backward, that is to the original point, and this is how the rotating motion is being observed by using this connecting rod which is being connected to the crank. So this is all about the mechanism, how the mechanism is been taking place for a reciprocatory engine. And now we will look at the inverse of single sliding crank chain. So in this we will be looking at the rotary internal combustion engine of second inverse. Now over here, this is an inverse of single sliding crank chain mechanism which we are able to see from the first figure. It consists of 6 cylinders. The second diagram is nothing but an overview to understand about the mechanism. On the second diagram there are only 5 cylinders are present. Okay, so in actual over here it consists of a 6 cylinder lies in one plane and all revolves around a fixed center D. So all revolves along a fixed center D. The crank is fixed when the connecting rod, that is the second part of the link, okay, when the connecting rod, the crank is the link 2 is fixed, while the connecting rod link 3 rotates, then the piston, that is link 4, reciprocates inside the cylinder forming link 1. Now here in the second part of this diagram, so from this second part of this diagram we are clearly able to understand how the mechanism is being performed of a rotary IC engine. So over here we are able to see that how the piston is been moving upward and downward direction when the crank is rotated. So over here the piston movement upward and downward direction is different for the each and every piston. Okay, now we are able to see that there is one fixed point at the center and others are performing a reciprocatory movement, that is nothing but the pistons are performing a reciprocatory movement, whereas the crank is performing rotary movement. Apart from this, we can able to observe how the mechanism is carried out in this IC engine. There are valves present at the top side. These are nothing but the valves which are present. This at the top side are the valves present of the IC engines. So as the piston reciprocate depending on the movement of the piston, whether the piston is moving in upward and downward direction, the valves gets activated and the function is being performed and it is being carried out. So we will see one more diagram so to get an clear understanding about this rotary internal combustion engine. So let's see the second diagram. So from this second diagram we can able to see how the movements are present in the piston. So over here observe the movement of this piston. See here how the piston, see now piston is at the top side. Now further when this piston, see here at this point this piston is at the downward side. So here how there is a change in the location of the piston taking place, so that the piston is moving in upward as and downward direction. This is all about the rotary IC engine.